Windows has removed hundreds of features over 30 years. Most people assume the ones that mattered were always replaced with something better. They weren't. If you've ever opened Windows after an update and spent 10 minutes looking for something that used to be there, you already know what this video is about. Some were replaced with nothing, some were replaced with something worse, and in almost every case, the only explanation Microsoft offered was silence. Windows Media Center. Windows Media Center launched in 2002 with Windows XP Media Center Edition. It was a complete home entertainment hub running on a standard PC. Live TV recording, DVD playback, music library management, photo slideshows, internet radio, all of it navigable from a couch with a remote control. Before Netflix had a streaming service, before Spotify existed, before smart TVs were a category, Media Center was the answer to a question the market hadn't fully formed yet. What if your PC was also your living room? The user base it built was genuine and dedicated. Home theater PC communities formed around it. Hardware manufacturers built tuner cards specifically to extend it. Plug-in ecosystems developed for years after Microsoft stopped active development following Windows 7 in 2009. In May 2015, Microsoft announced that Windows Media Center would not be included in Windows 10. The stated reason: declining usage. The community response: that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Usage declines when you stop developing the product. Microsoft said nothing further. A change.org petition to bring it back gathered tens of thousands of signatures. Media Center was not brought back. The third-party software industry that filled the gap, Plex, Kodi, Emby, is worth billions of dollars today. Those platforms exist in part because Microsoft abandoned a feature and left an entire category of user without a native solution. The people who are still angry about this aren't angry about nostalgia. They're angry because nothing Microsoft has shipped since 2015 does what Media Center did in 2009. The classic Start menu. The Start menu appeared in Windows 95. For 17 years, through 95, 98, 2000, XP, Vista, and 7, it sat in the bottom left corner and gave users immediate keyboard navigable access to every program, setting, file, and search on their computer. It was not a beloved design. It was a trusted tool. The distinction matters. In October 2012, Windows 8 removed it entirely. In its place, the Start screen, a full-screen tile interface designed for touchscreens on a device most users operated with a keyboard and mouse. The backlash was immediate and historically large. Sales underperformed. Hardware partners were furious. IT departments delayed deployments. Users installed third-party tools to restore a button Microsoft had decided they no longer needed. Classic Shell, a free tool built specifically to restore Start menu functionality, had been downloaded nearly 40 million times by the end of 2024. That is not a niche community. That is the scale of demand that Microsoft was generating for someone else's software by refusing to maintain its own. Windows 8.1 in 2013 restored a Start button. Pressing it did not open the Start menu. It opened the tile interface. Microsoft had restored the symbol without restoring the function. Windows 10 brought back a hybrid Start menu, part classic, part tiles, satisfying neither audience completely. Windows 11 moved the Start button to the center of the taskbar for the first time in its history, hiding recent documents and removing direct folder access that had been standard in Windows 7. The fury this generated was the second wave of an argument that began in 2012 and has never fully ended. Desktop gadgets, the security kill that felt like an excuse. Windows Vista introduced the sidebar in 2006, a panel on the right edge of the desktop hosting small information apps called gadgets. A clock, a weather display, a CPU and RAM monitor, an RSS reader, a calendar, always visible, always updating. Information present on your desktop without opening an application. Windows 7 removed the sidebar but kept the gadgets, allowing them to float anywhere on the desktop. Users arranged them precisely. CPU monitors in corners, weather displays beside the taskbar, clocks for multiple time zones. On July 10, 2012, Microsoft issued Security Advisory 2719662. Security researchers Mickey Shkatoff and Toby Kohlenberg had discovered that the gadget platform, which ran on Internet Explorer's rendering engine, contained genuine remote code execution vulnerabilities. An attacker could create a malicious gadget and trick a user into installing it, gaining full administrative control of the affected system. This was presented at Black Hat 2012 shortly after the advisory. The vulnerability was real. Microsoft's fix: disable desktop gadgets entirely via the advisory and exclude them from Windows 8, which was launching that same year. No patch, no sandboxed replacement, disable and deprecate. The user anger was not that the security reasoning was false. It was that Microsoft's response to gadgets can be malicious if installed by users who are tricked was to remove all gadgets rather than improving the platform's sandboxing. Browser extensions have equivalent vulnerability profiles and were never removed. Users who had never installed a third-party gadget in their lives lost the Microsoft-built ones alongside the rest. The desktop gadget communities that kept building unofficial replacements for years afterward were building them because Microsoft's solution to a security problem was to eliminate the feature rather than fix the underlying architecture. Windows Timeline. Windows Timeline launched with Windows 10 in April 2018. The promise: a complete visual history of everything you had worked on across any device connected to your Microsoft account. Every document, every browser tab, every app opened, laid out chronologically so you could scroll back days or weeks and return to exactly where you had been. The specific problem it solved: you worked on something 3 days ago, you don't remember what it was called or where you saved it, and you need it now. Timeline could find it. For users who adopted it, it was genuinely useful in a way that nothing else on Windows was. Microsoft removed Timeline completely in Windows 11 in 2021. No replacement, no migration path, no explanation beyond a vague reference to it being superseded by cloud-based activity. The Microsoft Edge history tool that nominally replaced the browser portion does not cover documents, apps, or cross-device activity. The Feedback Hub votes requesting Timeline's return reached tens of thousands. The votes were acknowledged. The feature was not restored. It remains years later one of the most cited examples in productivity communities of Microsoft removing something that worked, not because usage was low, but because the product team had moved on. Live Tiles. Live Tiles were the centerpiece of Windows 8's start screen in 2012. The idea was genuinely compelling. A start menu that showed live information without requiring you to open anything. Weather updating in real time, calendar appointments, news headlines, email previews. The start screen as an information dashboard rather than a static launcher. The execution was partial. Microsoft's own apps delivered the promise. Weather, calendar, and news tiles worked as described. Third-party developers largely didn't bother. Most prioritized iOS and Android where users were. By the time Windows 10 included a hybrid start menu with live tiles, the majority of tiles on most users' machines were static icons with a colored background. In Windows 11, Microsoft removed live tiles entirely, replaced with a simplified grid of static launcher icons. The irony? Microsoft spent nearly a decade building, defending, and insisting on this feature through the Windows 8 backlash and Windows 10's compromise, then removed it before their own vision for it had ever been fully realized. It was abandoned at the moment it would have begun to make sense. Internet Explorer Enterprise Mode. Internet Explorer's removal is, for most users, the right call. For specific organizations, it created a serious operational problem. Hospitals, banks, government agencies, and manufacturers had built internal software, patient records, procurement tools, timekeeping systems that ran exclusively in Internet Explorer, built between 2000 and 2010 when IE was the standard. Replacing that software is expensive and slow in ways that have nothing to do with technical competence. IE's enterprise mode was the compatibility layer that let those organizations run IE-dependent applications on modern Windows without making IE their primary browser. Microsoft ended IE support on June 15, 2022 and offered Edge IE mode as the transition solution. Edge IE mode does not support all the legacy technologies. Certain ActiveX controls, VB script implementations, specific browser helper objects that IE Enterprise Mode handled. For some organizations, the transition worked. For others, it created a deadline mismatch. Microsoft's deprecation timeline moved faster than an enterprise's replacement timeline. Those two timelines do not move at the same speed. They never have. Microsoft knew this and shipped the deadline anyway. The Windows Photo Viewer. Windows Photo Viewer was the default image viewer from Windows XP through Windows 8. Its qualities were entirely functional. It opened immediately, it displayed the image, arrow keys moved through the folder, mouse wheel zoomed one thing instantly. In Windows 10, Microsoft replaced it as default with the Photos app. Photos loads noticeably slower and does significantly more. Editing tools, albums, cloud integration. None of those additional features are what users want when they double-click an image to look at it. Windows Photo Viewer was not removed, it was hidden. Still present in system files but excluded from the default app list, and not visible in the app chooser without a registry edit. That registry edit was documented in how-to guides that collectively received millions of views. Direct measurement of demand for a tool Microsoft had not deleted but had deliberately obscured. Windows 11 continued the same approach. What it represents is the pattern across every feature on this list. Something that worked being replaced by something that does more and does the original function worse. Aero Glass. Windows Vista introduced Aero Glass in 2007, translucent title bars, precise depth-rendered shadows, a visual language that made Windows feel physically layered, like panes of frosted glass stacked in front of each other. The effect required DirectX 10 and dedicated GPU acceleration, hardware specifications that exceeded what a basic Vista installation needed. Users paid for that hardware. Enthusiasts bought machines specifically to run the full Aero experience. Designers and creative professionals adopted Windows 7 partly because its interface felt premium in a way that matched what they were producing on it. The trade-off was explicit: better hardware, better interface. That contract was understood and accepted. In October 2012, Windows 8 removed Aero Glass entirely. Microsoft's stated reason: performance on low-specification hardware. Aero's GPU requirements made it unsuitable for the broad hardware range Windows 8 needed to target. Tablets, low-cost laptops, and ARM devices that couldn't run DirectX 10 acceleration efficiently. The solution: remove it from every device, regardless of capability. A user running a high-specification desktop with a dedicated GPU received the same flat, opaque, color-filled interface as a user on a budget netbook. The hardware premium that had purchased the Aero experience was now irrelevant. No opt-in, no legacy mode, no way to keep the interface you had specifically equipped your machine to run. The community response was immediate and lasting. Tools like DWM Glass and Aero Glass for Win 8 Plus emerged to restore translucency through third-party injection. These were not simple tweaks. They required bypassing Microsoft's rendering pipeline to reintroduce depth effects the operating system had been explicitly designed to exclude. The fact that a community of developers did this, maintained it across Windows 8, 8.1, and 10, and that their tools were widely downloaded, is the clearest available signal of how many users considered Aero's removal a regression rather than an evolution. Windows 11 eventually reintroduced partial translucency. The mica material effect applies a subtle background blur to title bars and settings panels on capable hardware. It is not Aero Glass, but its existence confirms that Microsoft understood eventually that removing depth from the interface entirely had been the wrong direction. They reintroduced the concept. They never acknowledged that removing it was a mistake. That acknowledgement, present in the product decision, absent from any communication, is the pattern this entire video is about. Cortana. When Cortana launched with Windows 10 in 2015, it was the most integrated assistant Microsoft had ever built into an operating system. Not integrated in the sense of a button in the taskbar. Integrated in the sense that it had genuine system access, natural language reminders, flight tracking from email, package tracking, proactive notifications about traffic before you needed to leave, calendar management from the Start menu search bar. You could say, "Remind me to call Sarah when I get to the office," and it worked. You could type a flight number and get live status. For users who adopted it, it was the closest any Windows assistant has come to feeling like it understood context, rather than just responding to commands. Microsoft spent the next 6 years systematically removing Cortana's capabilities. Integration with third-party services was dropped. Proactive features were removed. Music playback was stripped out. Smart home integration ended. By 2022, it was a largely decorative presence. In late 2023, Microsoft removed Cortana as a standalone app from Windows 11 entirely. The timing. Cortana was removed from Windows in the same 12-month period that AI assistants became the most widely discussed technology in the world. Microsoft owned OpenAI. Microsoft was building Copilot. Microsoft had more investment in AI than almost any company on Earth. And the AI assistant they had built natively into Windows with deep system integration was removed. Copilot, the replacement, is a web interface layered onto the operating system, not built into it. It does not have Cortana's system access. It does not read your calendar, track your flights, or set location-based reminders. The assistant that did those things was removed to make room for the branding of an assistant that currently does not. The pattern: Microsoft Feedback Hub as a graveyard. Every feature on this list has something in common beyond removal. None of them came with an explanation that users found adequate. Declining usage, without disclosing what declining meant in a feature used by millions. Security concerns, without explaining why the solution had to be elimination rather than repair. Being superseded by features that did not actually supersede them. The Microsoft Feedback Hub contains requests on the features in this video with vote counts in the tens of thousands, some exceeding 50,000, that have been open for years. The status on many: closed. Not enough votes, or closed at product team has reviewed. 50,000 votes, closed without action, with a status implying the number was insufficient. The anger is not primarily about the missing features. It is about what the pattern of removal communicates. When a company removes something you rely on without explanation, the message is that your use case was not considered. Windows has delivered that message consistently enough that for a significant portion of its user base, unexplained removal is now the expected behavior. Not a surprise, an expectation. That erosion of trust is harder to rebuild than any individual feature. Microsoft isn't alone in this. Apple has been quietly removing features for years. And just like Microsoft, the explanation offered was usually silence. Every Apple feature removed and never brought back is on screen right now.